All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Ah, perfect. I hate how Discord always switches up the audio devices.
Okay. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, again, sorry for the delay, but we can finally begin.
Okay, let's begin then. So, if I'm not mistaken, the topic was the profit motive is good, or as an incentive is good.
Yeah, about the profit motive as an incentive. Depending on where things go, I guess we could also like. I mean, for example, like let's say halfway through the debate, we don't really make much progress on whether it's a good incentive. Then I guess we could also go into the direction of whether it's necessary, like in the vein of the ECP or whatever. But yeah, for now, I would prefer talking about it as an incentive structure.
Okay, do you have an opening remark? Something written down?
I have nothing written down. I would make this off the cuff of my hand. Basically, my main argument here would be about to what extent the profit motive as an incentive aligns with our general societal goal of maximizing human flourishing, like maximizing well-being and avoiding suffering. Whether you agree with that goal is up to whatever you believe is whatever your personal moral preference is. But I think generally that aligns with what a lot of individuals want for themselves. You know, we all want to be happy. We all want to suffer as little as possible. So yeah, that would be my opening remark, I guess. Just that I think the two don't optimally align, and I think there are better incentive structures to organize an economy around. Basically, to me, my ideal system would be a decentrally planned economy in which consumers, I guess to an extent, democratically control those who control the productions.
Sounds horrifying. Okay, I'll start with mine.
Relatable.
I do have something written down, so I'm just gonna read it out. It should be like
All right.
5 minutes something. So I'll start with the definition. Uh, The profit motive is a positive and ethical pursuit. It is a natural and necessary consequence of individual rights in a capitalist economic system. Individuals have the right to pursue their own self interest, which include the pursuit of financial gain. Profit is achieved by creating value and providing products or services that others voluntarily choose to purchase. Profit is earned through productive work, innovation, and the satisfaction of customer needs and desires. It incentivizes individuals to engage in productive activities, to take risks, and to seek out new opportunities. It encourages efficiency, cooperation, and the allocation of resources to their most valued uses. The profit motive is a powerful force that drives economic progress. The argument that profit is bad has its roots in religion. The love of money is the root of all evil, from the Bible. The rich always get richer and the poor are always getting poorer, Gospel of Luke. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, again Luke. From Matthew, then Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who were selling and buying in the temple, and he overturned the tables of money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." Augustine also commented, Christians make a common property of the riches with far more excellent purpose, namely, so that they may distribute to each according to his need. The emphasis here is on the danger of placing material possession above one's relationship with God and others. The Apostle Paul advises, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hopes in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. That's what Timothy. During the Enlightenment age, there was a significant shift in attitudes towards making a profit. Enlightenment thinkers, influenced by the rise of science and rational thought, saw economic progress as the mean to improve human conditions. They viewed commerce, trade, and the pursuit of profit as essential drivers of economic growth, innovation, societal development. Enlightenment thinkers also began to question the moral and ethical dimensions of commerce and profit. Figures like Adam Smith, an influential philosopher and economist of the Enlightenment, argued that self-interest and the pursuit of profit could lead to the overall wealth and prosperity of nations. Deirdre McCloskey, an historian and economist, argues that the key drivers of wealth creation, specifically in the last 200 years since the Enlightenment, was the newfound appreciation of dignity and virtue of market activity. This shift in values allowed individuals to freely engage in entrepreneurial pursuits, innovate, and take risks in pursuit of profit. As a result, there was an explosion of creativity, invention, and technological progress that led to the substantial increases in productivity and economic growth. Today, the left has secularized religion and has been doing so since the Enlightenment ended with counter-Enlightenment thinkers like Kant, Hegel, and Marx. They have replaced putting God and others above wealth with putting the greater good of society and others above wealth. As a result of this, centuries of religious moral thought remains largely intact in the culture in the form of moral intuitions. Even if they deny it, they have no rational explanation for their moral structure, as it is founded in a supernatural faith, replaced by a similar faith-based structure now called the greater good, whom you have a moral duty to serve. That's it.
All right, so there were a few things there that I would like to respond to. I guess to start off with your last remark, why would you call the abstract? Well, I guess if we treat it as an abstract ideal, it's very easy to like mystify the idea of the greater good. But if we treat it as a concrete, just like what the people as a whole desire, or like I guess the amalgamation of every person's desires. I don't think that there's anything religious or godlike about it. I think essentially because society is a collection of individuals who came together to pursue common goals, right? So, from my perspective, pursuing this idea of the greater good, that which is best for the most amount of people, seems to be what society is organized around.
Well, no, society in and of itself is a sort of, let's say, platform or system where it gives you rights and gives you certain protections and certain freedoms. Obviously, I would argue for freedoms from force against other people that then allows you to engage with other people, to have, again, I mentioned certain freedoms, but it allows you to engage with other people through this platform that we call a society. So you choosing to engage in the platform in the ideal scenario is because it serves your self-interest. Like this, being part of this social system is beneficial to me, therefore I will engage in it. And the difference between what you said and what I'm saying is that in my example, the individual is primary. The individual is the society or the social system. Main purpose is to serve the individual and make sure all individuals have like a certain degree of freedom, rights, protections, things of that nature. Whereas in your system, the collective is primary to the individual, and the individual needs to sacrifice something to it. Now, I do not think you can make the claim that the greater good is anything but a mystical notion, because you're saying that from a group of humans, a collective is born, or a greater good or society, and that these individuals within a society are subjugated to it. So I can't see it, I can't touch it. I have no direct evidence that this entity exists, so it will be supernatural at the very least by default. But
I would disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
I would disagree with the notion that I'm putting the abstract idea of the collective above the individual. As I said, to me, the collective is but a collection of individuals. When I say that you might like have to sacrifice your freedoms for the collective. What I'm saying is that you should sacrifice certain freedoms for the well-being of your fellow individuals. This isn't about satisfying some abstract idea that's out there in the ether. It's about satisfying the self-interest of all the people around you.
So
And to me,
you're saying you are your brother's keeper.
in what way?
Helping, well, from religion, you have a moral duty for other people in the collective.
Yes, I would. Well, moral duty is a bit. I'm a moral subjectivist. I don't believe that there's anything like objective morality out there. But yes, my preferences
Okay, I'll
are
take off.
certainly of a utilitarian nature.
I'll take off the moral and just say you have a duty for your fellow man.
I perceive that I have a duty towards my fellow man. Yeah, there is
Okay.
no objective thing that dictates this duty, but I have a preference to see other people happy, basically.
Okay, so let me put it this way: I as a rational egoist, I would
Yes.
say that look, I have evidence that I exist, so I can, through my senses, I have direct awareness that I exist, and I also know through science that I have a limited amount of time to live. So my obligation or my duty would be to myself. I don't exactly use those words, but it's easier to explain to you in this notion. Because I only have one life and because I have a limited time to live it, that would mean the highest priority should be my own and above other people around me. Because I only have my own life to live. That's fact based. Yeah, I'm not saying anything unusual in that sense. So for me to have a moral system would be what sort of moral or ethical system would be the best for me to live a good life, the one that maximizes my time or maximizes my maybe maximize is not a good word but what it is to live a good life, and subjugating myself to other people would be a sort of if I choose it, if I don't choose it voluntarily, will be a way of imposing something on my life and making my life poorer or worse, or just hurting me in some particular way, or not letting me live the life of the way I want to. Um, and therefore, I think that this is a negative thing. Now, for example, I do have a family, and I chose to have a family, and I would do things for my particular family because I chose to. It helps my life to be with them. It makes my life better to be with them. But people I've never met and people I don't know about that belong to this sort of collective that I may or may not identify with or be part of, or obviously they're outside my immediate family and I didn't choose to be with them. I'm not talking about friends of ours or anything.
Of course.
That would go against me living a good life and therefore doesn't make any rational sense. So if you were to say I have a duty towards other people in some abstract collective, because the collective could be all of humanity, this country, this continent, this city, this town, people of my skin color, people of my ethnicity. It could be a variety of different ways of saying this is the collection that I belong to. So you'd have to justify to me why I have this duty for others, like as in either inductive or deductive, but you have to give a justification for it.
Well, my argument there would, as I said, I don't believe that there's any such thing as objective duty. So all I could do there is appeal to your own self-interest. And my argument there would essentially be that other people would be just as obligated to you as you are to them, right? And since you are a minority and they are the majority, the way you could see is that the majority has also a duty towards you to maximize your well-being. That way, you all form a system in which all of you strive for the best for the best of all of you, basically. And whether that is to your benefit or not really depends on your current position on life, right? Like there's certainly going to be people whose self-interest is going to be hurt by a more collectivist approach to society. But definitionally, well, assuming that both the individualist approach and the collectivist approach, assuming that both of them would work equally well, right, in terms of the feasibility, then definitionally the collectivist approach would be best for the majority. Now, whether you are going to find yourself in that majority or not, it's likely, but I can't guarantee it. So, like, if you are currently in a very powerful position, then yeah, I would certainly argue that the things I advocate for probably wouldn't be in your self-interest. Although even there, you could like argue that there's certain. I guess you could argue that there's psychological downsides to like feeling very alienated to your society and feeling like you're above them and all that stuff. But ultimately, that seems very intangible. So I probably wouldn't make that claim.
Okay, so I'm happy to proceed uh, from a self-interested point of view, saying, if I need help, and then being part of a system that offers help, then I'd have that. I can discuss that going forward from that perspective. Meaning, we agree that the good is from a self-interested position, but
Well, I
are
would
we?
say that there is no good beyond your subjective experience. Yeah,
That's
there is
fine.
no like objective good,
Yeah, yeah.
and I believe in psychological egoism. So yeah.
Okay. But so from your point, but just before we go onto that direction, I just want to clarify a few points. Um, so you're saying we do not have a duty for others, and you cannot point and say this is a collective, this is the greater good. Here's evidence for it, because it is not a supernatural entity. It is an actual entity that you could see and touch.
Yeah, the collective would by necessity be a socially constructed thing. It would be like we choose to come together in this collective.
Okay, so
Or we choose to define this as the collective can mean anything, right? There is no there's no objectively defined collective. It's whatever you choose to define as your collective.
okay, and the things that I choose, sorry, the things that I choose as the good or as moral things, did I get these things from religion and are now in the form of intuitions?
I wouldn't necessarily say that you got them from religion.
Where else would I have got them from?
I think we have certain, I guess to an extent, evolutionarily ingrained preferences that come from empathy.
Well, I would say this. So you're saying the answer. So just to clarify, you're saying the answer is evolutionary biology is that gives you empathy. Yes.
It's why most people care about other people, yeah. Obviously, there's some people who don't, but
Are there cultures that have low levels of empathy now and in the past?
entire cultures, no, I wouldn't
Yes.
say so. There's different ways to spin empathy. Like, for example, it's really easy to form an outgroup that you don't have to feel empathy towards, right? But I would
Yes.
argue that's more of a cognitive trick to circumvent empathy than actually like getting rid of empathy, right? Like a Nazi still deeply cared about his family, right? He just did he just basically cognitively fucked himself into believing that other people aren't as deserving, or other people aren't even people, so they wouldn't be deserving of that empathy.
So if they were, I have to be clear here. So if they were part of his group, he would have empathy for them. If they were outside his group, he would not.
If he wasn't a sociopath, then yes. Which, yeah, there's like there's a lot of evidence that like a lot of horrible people in history weren't like actually psychologically ill, right? They just grew up in an ideology that made them believe that their moral tendencies only apply to a certain group of people and not to others.
Okay, I'd like to abstract empathy just before we move on. I'd like to just abstract empathy. Oh, sorry, this would be the last point.
Yes.
Uh, are you familiar with Nietzsche and Nietzsche's slave morality?
No.
No, have you heard of either?
I've heard of them, obviously, but I've never like read up on them.
Okay, so I'll just summarize it quickly. So Nietzsche is making the claim specifically against Christianity that before Christianity happened, and in the days of ancient Greece, I think ancient Greece specifically, um, people back then had more like an emphasis on being virtuous, obtaining wealth, being like this heroic characters you read in books. That was their aim. Like the more you are of this, the better. And Nietzsche's critique is then Christianity came in, and that was the master morality. Sorry, then Christianity came in and say this is a slave morality where the weak the meek shall inherit the earth. The weak are more noble than the strong. You shouldn't really strive to be better than other people. The sort of like more like Christian mentality. That it's always a mixed bag, but that's
So, so,
his.
so basically, like in one, you are like kind of only in duty to yourself and to become the best version of yourself, and in the other, you are subjugating your own self to another idea or another entity.
Yes, but also putting um a sort of emphasis that strength is bad, weakness is good. Working hard. I don't know if working hard, but like for argument, working hard is bad or succeeding is bad. Sorry, but begging for help is virtuous. And then basically saying this is the slave morality, and um, Christianity succeeded in this. But the point is that I'm hearing a bit of an echo. Sorry, but the point is that before Christianity, people saw themselves and as sorry, I'm not, people are moving back and forth in my room, and I'm losing focus here.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
Basically, the point is before people tried to make as much money as they could, they tried to succeed as much as they could, they tried to live the best life that they could, and they may have had empathy for people in general, but it's not like the sort of empathy you have now that you're your brother's keeper and you have to help the poor. And I'm not saying that they did or didn't, but the emphasis was to succeed in life as much as possible as the main point. And today, because we're like living in this sort of culture which is ultimately from Judeo-Christian values and Judeo-Christian, hundreds of years of religious moral teachings, even if we don't, um, even if we haven't thought about it specifically, but then we just absorb them by osmosis or through Bible stories, things of that nature. So basically, before we had these stories, before we had religion, we didn't have this hardcore empathy that you're talking about. This is the point I'm making through Nietzsche, and it was different before then. So before the culture changed, we didn't have this empathy in quotations that you're talking about, or that's the point I'm making.
Basically, it manifested in different ways, right?
Basically, you
Like the
read
feeling was still there, but it wasn't like, oh, I have to help the poor. It was more like, I wish the poor were better, but I have to care about myself or something like that.
basically like let me simplify. As a child, you didn't hear stories about how you need to help the poor, how you need to put them before you, and that you shouldn't, try too hard to be better than them because they're the same as you. I'm 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 slightly doing tongue in cheek here, but before hearing those stories, society had a very different outlook on what it should be doing, what its goals should be, or what being virtuous means.
I'm open to the idea, sure. But what does that imply
That
about?
therefore it's not biological.
Well, sure. I wouldn't argue that utilitarianism or anything like that is biologically ingrained. I wouldn't
No,
say
you mentioned that we have inbuilt empathy, and to some degree,
yes.
like you can say, like a mother would have a inbuilt empathy for a child and stuff like that. But we had a period of time where it wasn't as you described. Like we kind of didn't have the societal empathy that you're talking about back then, prior to
Oh yeah,
religion.
I'm sure it always manifested in different ways, right? Like even in other places in the world, like nowadays, right? There's many people who look at a homeless person, and even in Judeo-Christian countries, right? There's plenty of people who look at homeless people with contempt, thinking that, oh, had they only made better choices, this is what they deserve as a result. Like there's plenty of people to do that. I'm not saying that the kind of we need to help each other mentality is ingrained in us. I'm just saying that the emotion that tends to lie at the root of the advocates of this mentality, that is ingrained in us. And how it manifests in each individual is subject to their own mentality and, yeah, obviously also in large part shaped by the culture they grew up in. But I'm not sure what that is telling us about I guess what our moral prescriptions might be or should be.
Okay.
Because to me,
Yeah.
it's like even if I presuppose that my utilitarian preferences are in large part shaped by my culture, I wouldn't necessarily see that as a bad thing because those preferences just are my preferences. There is no outside force that tells me that my preferences can't possibly be shaped by the culture I grew up in.
But what if these preferences don't serve you well? What if these are self-destructive?
How would they be self-destructive?
I'm just in general. I'm not. I'm not. How would they be self-destructive? They shorten your life, make your life worse, um, make you feel guilty for things you shouldn't be guilty about, so on and so forth.
Mm, I would say it depends on how self-destructive they really are. But I would say some degree of self-destructiveness is generally permissible, I guess, because out of self-destructiveness also comes like a great sense of purpose, right? And that generally seems to be a very good source of just happiness and fulfilledness. I would say purpose is a very vital aspect of every person. And how
But
you
why?
find that purpose is going to come down to the individual.
I'm not sure I understand how self-destruction and purpose are linked.
There can be great purpose to be found in suffering for others or just generally a greater cause. Like what you mentioned earlier with like making the most out of yourself, right? Self-actualization itself is often gonna come with a lot of suffering because you have to constantly self-reflect. You have to constantly work on getting better and better every day. That's not gonna be very. That's not gonna be very that's not going to make you happy a lot of days. In fact, that's going to be it's a lot of the days that is going to make you suffer. But what you get out of that is a great sense of purpose that you are aiming towards a greater goal
Right.
that you've chosen yourself, and that makes the suffering worth it, basically.
I'm not sure I would use suffering in this particular context. I would say that, let's say, you want to go to the gym a lot and you have a particular physical goal in mind, and then you go to the gym, you work hard, it is painful to some degree, and then you achieve your goal and you're very happy. I would say that that is a sort of prioritization where you prioritize going to the gym over something else, which could be enjoyable, but you're now in the gym with the idea that in the long term you would get something you'd be very happy or to achieve the goal that you set out for yourself. I would see self-destructive behavior more like physically harming yourself, self-sabotage in your career, because of doubts or like lack of confidence or something like that, or something that is doesn't serve your life. Not something that makes you work hard towards a goal that is for your life, but something that is taking you further away from living a good life.
I would say the same thing can apply there, right? Like if you are sacrificing a lot to help your local community, and then when you are 80 or something and you sit on your lawn, you just see you see how much your community has improved thanks to your services. I think that there can be a great deal of happiness found in that.
I mean, if you set yourself that goal and you wanted to do that,
Yes.
then by all means, I mean, I wouldn't say that is against the idea of living a good life. I would just preface like, are you sure that this is something that you really want, or someone else injected that idea into your head? But if it is genuinely your idea, like let's say in my town, I don't like it that there's so many homeless people, and I decide to set up like a non-profit or donate to an existing non-profit to help them, find like a better way to live their life, then that is something. And as a result, my town looks nicer and I feel better for being a part of it, and that's fine. Um, but that's something I chose voluntarily to do. So
I guess something I would criticize you for that. You criticized me earlier for like having this abstract idea of the collective, right?
yep.
And I would kind of levy that criticism at you for like that abstract idea of you as an actor. Because to me, if someone puts an idea into your head as a child, then when you grow older and that idea becomes more and more ingrained into your psyche, where is that line between this is your idea and this is the idea of someone else? To me, it seems like you as a person are in large part shaped by your environment. And yeah, those influences are external, but they become necessarily internalized by you and form who you are.
So I would say that largely doesn't matter as long as I thought about rationally if that idea that I got either from myself or from someone else is good for me long term. It could be advice, my parents gave me or something, but I still have to evaluate it rationally myself if it serves me. If it doesn't, check it out. If it does, use it. And the same thing, with morality from religion. If I'm in a Judeo-Christian environment and there are all these, moral prescriptions or principles that I need to follow, I need to evaluate those if those are helpful for me rationally. And if they are, adopt them. If they're not, chuck them out. And I think to some degree you would probably, do the same. Like if some idea from religion came that utilitarians didn't like, they would check it out as well.
Yeah, sure. I guess I agree with that. The idea that but what you're basically just pointing out is the value of self, or like the necessity of self-reflection, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes,
Introspection.
yes. I guess I would fundamentally agree with that.
Okay, so let's continue back to the main topic of profit. So you said we put a pin before on me being part of a collective is beneficial to me from a self-interested point of view. So let's discuss that.
It's going to be beneficial to you depending on your circumstance, and chances are that it will be.
Okay, so let me just raise a point. So in capitalism or free markets, we have this system of trade or the trade principle where I am self-interested, someone else is self-interested, and through this mechanism of trade, we decide because we are self-interested, it is in our interest to trade, and from this trade, we both gain something. It is a win-win exchange. It's done voluntarily, and that is one way of interacting with people, other people in society, or my society, where that benefits both people. And again, there's like a sort of harmony of interest from that happening.
I wouldn't say there's a harmony of interest. I would
That's
say I would agree that it necessarily is a win-win scenario if both parties agree with it. But the extent to which it is a win for both parties depends a lot on how much leverage each party has.
right, but by definition, it's a harmony of interest because that's like just the it's just the definition of it in a sense. We're both self-interested, and we agree to trade, and therefore both of us share similar interests. There is a harmony between our interests. Even if you take, let's say, an employer and employee, like soon to be employee, the employer wants to give a job, the employee wants to work at a job. That's a harmony of interest.
Well, no, because the employee's interest would be to receive the wage without or with a minimal contribution on his part, and the employer's interest would be to receive as much of the work with as little, with having to pay as little as possible, right? Well,
Right, but
whenever there's a
this is
trade going on, both parties are incentivized to get as much out of it while having to pay as little as possible.
right, but this is called compromise and collaborate. Like you can make that argument for husband and wife. Like the husband wants to do as little as possible, the wife wants to do as little as possible, and gain as much as possible. But we compromise and we collaborate, and
Yeah, and
therefore,
that compromise gets skewed into one direction if there's a power imbalance between both participants.
okay. So are you saying that this is not a win-win exchange? Let's take game theory. Are you saying this is not a win-win exchange? This is a prisoner's dilemma.
I'm saying it is a win-win exchange, but the extent to which it is a win-win exchange depends on the power imbalance. So basically, both parties have an incentive to minimize the win of the other. The other is still gonna get a win out of it, because they obviously they agreed to doing it. So at least in the moment, they must have had expected some benefit of it, right?
Why
But the extent to which they win is dependent on how much leverage the other person has over them.
why does one try to get as much as they can from the other? Why is it a adversarial relationship?
Well, because it's in their self-interest too. And both
Okay,
of their self-interest is
let me just ask then. So
yes.
let's take the employer. The employer has a job, like he's created a job in his company, and he needs someone to fill that job, right? And therefore,
Yes.
there's a job opportunity. What is the employer interested in? What is he most interested in?
He's most interested in filling that vacant position with with a laborer who's as qualified and as capable as possible,
Okay,
while costing as little as possible.
why is the costing as little as possible important? Because
Because
it seems like a secondary consideration.
oh no, it's absolutely not secondary because
Even
the
by
cost of his production is going to determine his profitability.
no, the revenue is going to determine his profitability.
Revenue and cost, like profit by definition, is
Right,
the
right. But if he has okay, so you yourself replied to me right now. I think in the correct order. You said someone filled the job to be as productive as possible. That was the that's definitely the primary concern. So if you have someone, even if you pay them a little bit more, but they're more productive, that is more beneficial because that serves the um, primary condition for the job.
I would argue both are kind of equal in that sense. Both are equal and both have to meet a certain threshold. And can't basically the cost can't be too high, the qualification can't be too low, and past that they kind of have to balance each other out.
I'm not sure if the qualifications are relevant. I'm just meaning for
Well,
for the
qualification is in the benefit the employer is going to get out of it.
right. So if the employer gets someone, okay, let's put it like this: if the employer hires someone, sorry, that is very very productive, should they give them a raise?
Mm. Potentially, depends on how they perceive the marketability of that employee, right? Like if they are productive because of something that's on their CV and something that's going to increase their market value, then yeah, they should likely give that employee a raise to make sure that no other employer snatches them away.
Okay, but they don't necessarily know if that additional productivity to their business translates into additional productivities in someone else's business. It could be that they're just very good only in their business because of certain reasons. So if they are more productive, should they give them a raise without factoring market conditions?
No, unless that raise is going to be used as an incentive for the laborer to become even more productive. But if there's no reason to
It could
assume
be
so, then
a raise could make them more productive.
I would say it's basically a cost benefit analysis, right?
Well, I'm asking you to do that.
Well, it depends on the circumstance,
Well,
but there's
I'm trying to make the case that the productivity is important. The productivity is most important. Salary is secondary. I'm not saying it's not important, but secondary to productivity. What if we hire someone very cheap, but the productivity is equally not great?
then he could hire another cheap person.
He
It
could
basically
hire
depends on the
he
ratio of the
he
productivity,
could
right?
hire. What if you have one person who's very productive but costs more versus two people who are cheaper but have lower productivity than the one person?
That could be a calculation that works out in the end.
So if you like if you
It
have a
depends on the business and what your goals are. If you have a
okay
business, if the position is just hard labor, then the people who are less productive are probably going to be better for you. But if it's a position where you want to see innovation, then you
sorry
might
sorry
want to consider the one who's more productive.
sorry if it's hard labor, if someone is less productive, then it's better for you. Why is that?
I'm saying if it's solely hard labor,
Mm-hmm.
then the chance then you get then you might get more out of it by hiring by just hiring two less productive laborers who also cost less.
Okay, so but
Because
even in even in physical labor, you have people who are better at physical things than others.
Of course, and what I'm saying is it doesn't have the same benefit as it does for certain mental tasks where there's innovations to be made.
Well, I agree that, people should, and in general, I think this is the case, that people start their career in some sort of minimum wage, like teenage job, and then they find a particular skill set, they marketable skill set, obviously, they perfect it, and over time, they command a higher and higher salary. And I think that is generally the trend. If you see people on minimum wage, typically they're very young, like between the age of 16 and 24. And throughout your career, you increase your salary towards, and obviously at some point save towards your pension, and then after you retire, you use that pension.
Yeah, that's generally how it works.
And pension, of
Oh,
course, is a
of course, how much you increase your salary is going to depend on a lot of things. But
sure.
even just like having the work experience is generally going to result in increases to your wage.
Right. So if we're saying like it's only minimum wage physical labor, that can't be like the place you stay in it your entire career. You have to like move up from that in some sort of way to improve your marketable skills.
Oh no, I would disagree there. I think there's a lot of people who never really move up the hierarchy. They still get paid more because their work experience is going to look a lot better
Okay.
on their resume, which in turn is going to increase their market value, which in turn puts pressure on the employer to pay them better. But aside from that, there's many people who simply it's a mix of factors, right? There's some people who don't desire. There's some people who think it's too much for them to handle in their current life situation. It's all sorts of reasons, really.
Okay, that's actually a good point that you're making. So if someone doesn't want to work hard or doesn't want to improve their marketable skills, should you still then support that person through your taxes?
Mm, sure, yes. You should support them to the extent to which, firstly, they still need to survive and they still contribute towards society, right?
Well, I think
So,
I think the survival. I mean, look, if they're still working, they can survive. They can achieve survival easily. Um,
yeah, right. So what I'm saying is like, why wouldn't we support them with
so if
our
they
taxpayer
stop if they
money?
stop working and they say I just don't want to, it's not for me.
I've varying opinions on that. Basically, my ideal for like people who just refuse to work
Hmm.
would probably to support them for a few years and then increasingly put more pressure on them to get therapy and that sort of stuff. Because I fundamentally believe that if a person just doesn't want to work at all, there's probably something going on there that needs help. And then increasingly, if they like keep refusing to work and like therapy and stuff like that doesn't work, then yeah, you should probably like cut down on spending to put some external pressure onto them because some people just need external pressure, right? I'm not denying that.
So are you saying that they are making the wrong self-interested choices for themselves and we need society to come in and force them to improve themselves?
I would say they're making the wrong decision for themselves, and we need society to come in and give them a nod into the right direction.
A nudge, yeah?
Yes.
I see, okay. Um, okay, so I've made the point earlier that profit, you know, in large part is a major factor in us in the West, for example, gaining a lot of wealth. Any country I could add
Oh,
also.
and quick addendum on the whole. They are refusing to work, but obviously, if we find out that they actually like have a mental condition that prevents them from working, obviously that is then another story, and which there would obviously be more leniency there. But yeah,
Yeah, I
sorry.
mean, there is also there can always be like a point where you or I can say that some people have reached a situation where they cannot work for no fault of their own, either by accident or by accident of birth or something like that.
Mm.
But I would say that statistically that is a tiny minority, and it cannot be a high minority, high majority or high minority, because just like as a species, we won't be able to survive over like centuries if that was constantly the case. So it has to be like a tiny minority, which
No, I agree with that. I just wanted to make clear that I'm not advocating for like just letting disabled people starve on the streets.
well, they can always go to Canada and get made. Who knows?
Anyways, continue.
Yeah, so I made the point that I linked the vast wealth that nations accrued since the Enlightenment, largely the last 250 years, the hockey stick graph where you see like all of history where we had no wealth or wealth was just concentrated like by a few kings and aristocrats to everyone having wealth, everyone having resources. And I made the case that it is profit and the attitude towards profit and free markets, and also like let's say legal rights, individual rights, things of that nature that has led us to have the wealth. So just from a utilitarian standpoint, I'm going to delve into your world a little bit here. Just from a utilitarian standpoint, taking that away or even like tweaking it doesn't seem like a good idea, because we are creating wealth, we're creating lots of resources, we're producing a lot of things that, and we can get to a stage where everyone has access to resources via this system. The more we continue with it, so why would we abandon that? What is the point you're making?
My argument there would be, firstly, we know that the system works better than previous systems, right? I wouldn't contend that at all. What I would contend, though, is the idea that we couldn't do better. And that's basically the point of this discussion, right? Whether there's issues with the current system that stop us from progressing as fast as we could. And I would make the case that that is the case. That the profit motive as an incentive structure it doesn't. Yes.
Doing better. Expand on doing better. What does doing better mean?
I would say doing better well, that's again to me as a utilitarian. Doing better for me would entail that we increase well-being and avoid suffering to whatever extent is ideal. And obviously that includes both short-term and long-term. So, for example, let's say socialism was feasible, but it would lead to zero economic growth, right? We would just stay where we currently are. In that case, capitalism long-term probably would lead to better results, because then there would still be economic growth, and we would. But basically, it's the difference between all remaining at the current place, but all being happy, and all raising further and further, and the baseline of happiness being raised up that way.
Well, I would say, like, just looking,
yes.
You are based in Europe, correct?
Yes.
Right. So Europe and the UK basically has not grown economically since 2007, 2008. So if you want a snapshot of what it looks like without any economic, and I mean there's been ups and downs, but on the whole, I mean the UK has not gotten back to the GDP per capita they did in 2007. And essentially, if you take the euro as a block, it's a flat line for the last 15 years. So if you're interested in looking at no economic growth and government playing a very, very large role in the economy, high taxation, high government spending, high regulation, you can look at Europe.
I would have to see those numbers.
Just quickly Google it. It's just do GDP per capita 2000.
Yeah, per year.
Pick a European country, like let's a large one. Let's say over 20 million.
Oh yeah, pick Germany. I don't know, in Germany that the GDP seems to have been rising continuously.
It goes down and then goes up, but overall in the last 15 years. So let's put it this way, right?
In 2007 it was let's see.
Yeah.
2007 it was at 42,000 million, I guess, and then now it's at 59,000 million.
Do per capita.
It is per capita.
Hold on.
Gross domestic per capita in current prices from. Wait, let me just send you the image. I don't know if it's adjusted for. Also, yeah, it's in current prices, so it's adjusted for inflation.
Well, it looks like Germany has grown a bit. UK, on the other hand, has not.
Well,
but if you take the whole block, if you take Germany and all the other countries,
let me see. Let's just go EU GDP per capita per year. United States. Story projected. I don't know if that accounts for inflation and stuff, but here would be another graph. Oh, did you send me something? But that's still rising, right? Well, actually, the USA.
The USA is
So the
rising.
USA has been rising. Japan has not.
Well, Japan, you know Japan.
Yeah. And yeah, but well, it seems like it's projected to rise again, though, right?
Well, the European Union has spent 2 trillion euros recently to stimulate the economy, as they do, and nothing has been stimulated. I think it was called the Next Generation Stimulus Package, and bear in mind what this means. It essentially means, let's just I'm simplifying a little, but it essentially means the EU has or will tax the economy and then take that money that they tax the economy from and then spend it on particular things, even if it's through bonds or printing money. It will still have to come from taxes at some point.
Yes.
And they spend it on particular things and they assume that these particular things will increase growth, and they have not. And even at the time of Juncker, like there was a job growth one, nothing in stimulus packet, nothing happened. There was a second one, I forget the name of, I can probably bring it up, that nothing happened. So if you're looking at flatlining and increasing cost, and actually I can show you basically, but
I mean, you could argue that those stimuluses were used to avert a downfall in downfall growth, right?
Right.
So just that the graph itself is flat doesn't tell us tell us much about the effect of those programs.
So the thing with that is that the idea of what you said is that you don't want to lose productivity, you don't want to lose the momentum in quotations of the economy during a downturn, and then you want to stimulate the economy during a difficult period and then expect it to come out of there with a higher GDP or higher GDP per capita that you can then pay off the stimulus that you did. So the expectation is...
that's the idea behind Keynesian economics, right? You invest in the downturns and collect taxes in the upturns.
Yeah, but the idea there is that you are preventing like a recession or a serious reduction in demand, let's say, and you're easing that off by giving people money or stimulating certain things that whatever. And the idea is that when you come out of it, you make more money and you pay that back off. But basically, the idea is that you are not stalling the productivity of the country, or you are keeping the productivity of the country in an upwards direction. The UK has been on I don't know about Germany, I guess it's better, but the UK's productivity is very, very poor and has been since the 1960s, even compared to France and Germany, but especially since 2007. So even if, let's say, we get a stimulus now, it won't mean that at the end of the stimulus we'll have higher productivity, because we haven't had in 2 decades.
I don't know. If I look at a lot of graphs about the GDP of the UK and current prices, it still seems to be going up, right? Let me send you a few.
GDP outright, just the GDP, sure, that the real GDP will grow.
GDP per capita in current prices. Yeah.
Well, even if you look at that graph you sent me, you can see like from 2008, 2007, it's only a little, okay, it's gone up and down, but this is kind of the point. It's only grown a tiny amount above that. What country is this? Oh, United Kingdom. Yeah, so the 2007, as far as I know, the GDP per capita in dollars is 51,000, and I think right now we're on 46 or 43. I'm not sure. 2021 probably.
Oh yeah.
But the UK productivity is a known problem anyway. I'm just saying that, and I, sorry, can I just take a sidestep for a second?
Of course.
In addition, we have the NHS. Yeah, I think in Germany you have like a 70-30 split or something. We've got a fully nationalized health. You can correct me, but here in the UK we have
public and private. Yeah, public is mandatory, and then if you earn enough, you can go private.
If you need to use public, do you pay some money or is it 100% covered?
You pay some money,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
It's
So
taken from your paycheck, basically.
okay. So no, sorry. If and when you need to use something from the
No. It's primary. Like there's some medicine that you have to pay like $10 for, but any doctor's visit and stuff like that is completely covered.
and what about an operation?
Operations are mostly covered. There's some dental stuff that needs payment. So, for example, what was it? Like if you need a tooth completely replaced, I think that costs some money. Although there's also there's basically what dental what your health insurance what our health insurances do is basically if you have a track record of always going to the dentist and getting the care you need, then you'll get like a great discount on operations like that. Basically, it's to encourage you to actually take care of your teeth, and then if you still need an operation anyways, you get it for very, very cheap.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So sorry. That's fine. So in the UK, the we have a fully nationalized healthcare service. We don't have. We do actually have dentistry, but dentistry is not great. Um, and we do have some help. We do have some private, but it's in addition. You still pay for the public and the private. You can either pay for yourself or your company may pay for you, but it's largely public by a big stretch.
Okay, so you have public, and then you can choose to have private on top of that.
Yeah, but it's not everyone has that. It's like again
Yeah.
public by a long way, and all emergencies are in the NHS. There isn't a private version of an emergency service. Um, and you know our kind of the point is that in addition to the previous point I made that we're not growing economically very well, at least in the UK, um, the cost for healthcare has been rising steadily, and I believe this is any country, literally any country, healthcare costs are going to go up over time. If you go back like from the 1970s to now, it's a straight line up. Any country you choose that has some sort of even mixed government healthcare, the trend is always going up. And the problem that we have, and to your point of view of reducing suffering and everything, and what is sort of like a mixed economy where we can reduce the most suffering and still grow economically, it seems to me that governments over time and the government services over time, increase in costs. And the more that they increase in cost, the more they need to tax the economy, the more they do that. And there's some other steps that I'm just generalizing for the sake of the example. The bigger the bigger the government services require, the bigger as in more money, the less money there is in the private economy because it's taxed away. The less money or the more regulations that the private economy faces, the harder it is to grow. And therefore we have this sort of like shift where the government grows but the economy does not. And over time, you have a situation where the government strangles the economy till the golden goose basically is dead. And that trend in terms of government services is only going up. I can explain why it's gone up, but what are the reasons for it to go up? But it is only going up and it is unsustainable. Certainly in the UK, the NHS needs.
What would you make of the situation in the US where like the healthcare is majority in the majority of healthcare, the vast majority of it is privatized and prices per person
As
are
far
higher than in any other developed country, as far as I know.
as far as I know, the government pays for 65% at the very least of all healthcare spending. That means it's majority public and not private. Obviously, there are private, and even in this context, like all pharmaceutical companies are private. Like a government providing a healthcare service gets its medicine from a private company. Innovations come from a private company. Um, you may have like public-private collaboration, but largely it's private. And I wouldn't. I would say it's like a Frankenstein hodgepodge of what not to do, and certainly very very heavily regulated. Still, they have a lot of medical innovations coming from there. I would say that the best example, and we use this in the UK often, is Singapore. We call it Singapore on Thames, but the example is Singapore, a former British colony. where the government does very very little with healthcare spend, but it also makes you save money from your salary towards, if you have healthcare issue, it's like a pot. Sorry, it makes you save towards healthcare, and then you can choose whatever you want to spend that, as long as it's a healthcare related issue. And the government just lightly, well, I would say lightly controls certain things in the healthcare sector. It lightly subsidizes the poor who need to use the emergency rooms. But at least from 2011, 60% of the healthcare spend was out of pocket, and the out of pocket is the free market, where you don't have either the government or a insurance company standing in between you and your doctor. Insurance still has a place, but it's more like in case of emergency, in case of a large operation that you from the emergency that you had to get. These are like extreme cases that you need insurance for. It's not there to cover regular medicine that shouldn't be very expensive because of, a variety of different reasons in the US. So the way that it should be on the free market more approach is out of pocket and insurance for extreme cases.
And you're only, I guess, do you have like a logical argument for why that should be the case, or would you just point at Singapore? Because I feel like
The logical argument is that this is the only way that prices would not go up over time, would go down over time. The market in and of itself, just by its nature, reduces price and increases quality. That's its thing. Like you take television sets, mobile phones, cars to some degree. These are things that over time go down in price. I mean, more or less, but tend to go down in price and go up in value. If they stay the same price, but at least go up in value at the very least, in the case of mobile phones, let's say. This is the only way that we can reduce the price of these costs. If you take eye surgery for like, not like for LASIK eye surgery, or even if you take the cosmetic industry, which is, it's not exactly an apples to oranges comparison, but they do go down in cost over time, and they are part of the market. So the only way to reduce costs long term is to put things in the market. And then if you say, well, look, some people, need some extra help, sure, you can arrange something to help them through voluntary means, I would say. But even let's say I'll bite the bullet and say it's not voluntary means. If it's much cheaper to help them, then it's still a good thing.
would you agree with me that the primary, or like I guess a big mechanism by which the market cuts prices is by innovating?
Yeah, innovation, improvements in productivity.
So what reason do you have to believe that government services couldn't have similar levels of innovation, especially since so much
they have no
innovation
incentive to. They don't have. They have no incentive to. They don't have the profit motive. That's a feature, not a bug. They don't. They should. You would not want them to have the profit motive.
So you think innovation requires the profit motive to be incentivized?
I mean, I'm obviously giving like a blanket statement very quickly, but I would say largely.
Well, let's say the profit motive is a better incentive for innovation.
I mean, yeah, I would say so. I mean, I'm happy that you could say something, and maybe I can tweak my statement. But on the face of it, yes.
Okay, so by that, do you mean the innovations themselves or investment into the innovations? Because most innovators sit in research and development departments where they are paid a wage, right? So they don't have an immediate profit motive. They don't reap the benefits of the product being sold directly. They just get paid a wage that's usually going to be very high if they're good at their job.
No,
but they still receive a wage.
Most researchers are not in an office. They get money from particular things, and it can be the case that it's like a biotech startup that's trying to solve something, like in the case of BioNTech for the Pfizer vaccine. It can be the case that it's a university research team. It is not the case that it's just like a clerk somewhere making innovation happen. I mean, you could say there's two ways of looking at innovation.
In all these cases, like the innovator himself
No,
isn't the guy who actually sells the product, right?
no, I'll explain. So
Yes.
you can look at the way to get innovations in two ways. One is the entrepreneur sitting in his garage and looking at some kind of niche in the market, some kind of need that's missing, uh, and then getting putting together different scientific advances from other places, putting them together, creating a product or service to serve that need, and then giving it to the market where it did not exist before. That's on the one side, and that is extremely important for improving the quality of life and economic growth. And then on the other hand, you can say that there's incremental innovation to something that already exists, and then you have like a sort of methodical process that capitalism also has done well to improve, where you slowly incrementally improve an existing something, and then at some point it reaches a point where it's significantly better, significantly cheaper, significantly better quality, but it's the same thing. But it's not like a revolutionary difference. It's just incremental improvement. Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
How much, especially of like scientific breakthroughs and that sort of stuff, do you think is made up of entrepreneurial activity? Like literally a guy sitting down in his garage, I guess, getting a loan from a bank, opening his own office, and then getting to it himself.
No,
How much?
you're confusing two things. It's not that the guy in the garage is a scientist. He's in fact not a scientist. There's two different ways of looking at it. It's a innovation and invention. A scientist will have an invention or discover something. A businessman or entrepreneur will is the intermediary between the science and you. He gets the science from where it's been discovered, uses it in a particular, understands how it's used, understands where it's beneficial, puts together a product from it, and then sells you a product that improves your life. That the innovation, it's not like a lab coat person, it's an entrepreneur. He's your middleman between the science and you.
Okay, but then my point stands, right? How much of that form of innovation is made by the little entrepreneur guy who opens his own startup, and how much of it is happening basically in already established companies by research and development staff that's getting paid a set wage?
Well, it's not research and development staff.
Or then who is it?
Well, it will be more like a product manager or so. Is that what you're referring to? Like, how do you get the innovations, the market innovations, or someone
It
creates
depends
new?
on I guess depends on the company how they have their entire hierarchy structured. But yeah, sure. But basically, what I'm saying is that in the companies, there are people who make the innovations and who are getting paid a wage for it.
Well,
It's not the company owner who does the innovations in most cases, right?
it is okay. So let's based on your question, let's compare two countries, and you tell me, and I'll try to be as close to your question as I possibly can. Let's take Europe and let's take America. Yeah, America has the Silicon Valley, a lot of new innovation coming from there, very revolutionary. We've got AI coming soon. ChatGPT just came from there. Very, very big deal. A bunch of, I don't know, 5 people, 10 people. I don't know. The team that did ChatGPT 4 was 4 people. And this has profound impact on the rest of the world. Yeah, tiny company. They had big investment, I think, by that point. But tiny company, huge influence on the rest of the world. And then you take Europe. Europe does not have a presence in the tech industry at all. The vast majority of the companies in Europe are oil companies, not even insurance, oil companies, fashion companies, something that's been around for a very long time. That's the thing with Europe. And there, let's say, and car companies, let's say, there you can, improve. You put your R&D money in. You slowly improve the engine so it's 2% faster than the year before. The brakes are 2% better than the year before. And in that kind of scenario, yes, you have like people working in R&D, and that's the scenario you describe. Now, in your opinion, which one has a bigger impact on the globe?
Well, obviously AI, right? But that's an individual example. There are many other inventions like the internet, computation, all that stuff that had like a great involvement of the public sector. And even with AI, as far as
So
I know, there's like
you're
since
wrong.
it's like
You're wrong with regards to the internet, and it's very upsetting. Okay, so let's look at it like this, right? So you think that the public sector has a heavy influence on everything. Maybe you haven't said this, but you are quoting someone that I know that is saying that, um, and lives in the UK as well. That everything that we see today, the government had some involvement in, like tiny bit, and therefore because like it's like a game of Go where you have like a line of 8 white pebbles, and if the government spent like $1,000 giving someone in the whole line of pebbles, they put a black pebble, and the whole row of pebbles, like the internet, it's all government, massive government
I wouldn't
subsidies. Like
make that argument.
no,
Obviously, we live
no,
in a
n-
yeah.
no, it's not. So the government, the thing with the internet, and I would say this to begin with, if the government has a particular role, it would be the military, because the military is charged with protecting the citizens from outside invaders. And if the military has a particular requirement, it is perfectly within their rights to pay for it, because there shouldn't be necessarily a market in force. In my opinion, there should not be a market in force. That should not exist.
Yeah.
And if the military says, we are in the 1970s, we are concerned because there was an internet, like there was like a sort of communication system back then. It was just like a sort of hub and spoke method where you had to go through different centralized hubs of communication, and the military was concerned that if the enemy bombs these communication hubs, which were private, then there would be like a great deal of loss of communication and confusion, and they didn't want it. So they spent money on working on something towards the internet, which is to me perfectly fine. And then like from the 70s to like the 80s, they kind of handed it off to university people who were using it to communicate between each other. Then from that point to what we have today, there was an immense amount of money poured in by the private sector, as well as tweaking the core algorithms and the core technologies that led to what we have today. Now, even if the government did not wish to spend that money, we would still have had the internet. Just it would have been less fault tolerant because the military, needed something fault tolerant. That was their requirement. That's fine. If the military, for example, now invest in some kind of drone technology, and then that technology leaked towards regular drones that you can buy, that's still fine from my point of view, because they don't have a market for that. Like they needed something that didn't exist, and they wanted to pay for it for the research. That's their prerogative. That's fine. That's not to say that the government is some sort of oracle and they can predict what kind of that a bureaucrat can predict what kind of technology will be used in the future, like the internet, and invest in it in the future, and therefore reduce the uncertainty for regular companies to then come in and invest when it's easier. That wasn't what happened.
Oh no, I agree, but I guess I would make the point that like we live in a society where like the majority of economic activity comes from the private sector, right? So that's what you would expect to see, right? You wouldn't
Well,
expect
well,
you would expect the private sector to do all these refinements, since that's what the government expects the private sector to do.
but if the military needs something that's not available in the market, they have full right to fund that because they need it. Like if they need a
And that's what
machine,
they do, right?
if they
Like you
need
said.
if they need a machine gun that fires like way faster than a regular machine gun, I don't expect them like to go shopping in the market. They'll have to like pay someone, or they themselves will develop it, innovate it to the point to what they need.
Yeah, but my point here is there is no government institution that then takes those innovations and makes them more accessible to the consumers, right? the government gives those innovations to the market so that then the market can
They will
use those for
sell.
the
They
consumers.
will sell the
That's not,
patents. They will sell the
yes,
patents. Yes.
and yes, and that doesn't mean that the government would necessarily be less efficient at doing so. It just means that in our current paradigm, that's just not something the government is concerned with. They
No.
say they
The
see that as the purpose of the free market. So of course, the free market is going to take care of that.
Right, but they would not be able to predict what the free market will need 10, 20 years in advance.
I mean, nobody
They
can.
yes, they do what they need to do. They follow their own requirements. And if there's a happy accident where someone in the private sector wants to buy their patent, they'll pay for like they're happy to sell it. They make money from it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just don't really see how that. I guess I don't see how that proves how the free markets inherently has more potential for innovation.
Because the free markets are focused on customers, the needs of customers, and the government is focused, or the military, let's say, is focused on their needs, not the needs of the customers in the market and improving their lives.
Yeah, because they have been given the task to focus on something else, right? If you ever
And
had a government institution that's focused on the task of satisfying customers,
well, we have seen that. We've certainly seen that being tried.
could you like go into that into detail on that?
Sure, the
I'm curious.
USSR, East Germany, they tried towards the end to make consumer goods. They failed miserably.
Oh, and sure, but were tons of other issues with these systems, right?
Let me guess, bureaucracy, as if we don't have any of that now.
Actually, on the topic of bureaucracy, I think something that is often kind of overlooked by advocates of the private sector is that there's also tons of bureaucracy in the private sector, right? Like every single big firm has like a massive accounting and bookkeeping department in it. So I wouldn't necessarily say bureaucracy, right? I would mostly
No.
say like the
Hold on,
centralization
hold on,
itself, the narrowness of how the plans are made.
hold on. Bureaucracy is a huge problem for the economy, and there's a difference. And I will say outright because I worked with companies that were very large. There is a problem with bureaucracy inside companies, but there is a substantial difference between bureaucracy in the government and how it affects the economy versus bureaucracy in a large business.
What is
Let's
the difference?
sure. Let's say that let's take two scenarios. Let's say the government, bureaucrats in the government want to make something safer, and then they look to the market. They say, well, we need this to be safer, this to be safer, and if you want to sell this product, you need to get a license and approval from us before you can even sell it. Versus a company saying we need to make this specific product safer because our consumers are interested in safety, and safety would be considered part of the quality of the product. Like the product doesn't kill you, or product makes you extra safe. That's a car, let's say, has 5 stars on some magazine that it's safe, and you've got kids, so you're more concerned about safety for your children. You'll seek that car with more safety stars because that to you translates as a quality and value. So the difference between the two is that this is a bit difficult for me to explain, but the government basically just puts like a sort of review process that you have to pass, and that review process keeps changing. In the point of regulation, it is both harder to get approval for regulation, and it's both reduces the safety of the product. I can only explain the following way. So let's say I have to jump to a different example, to housing.
Well, let me stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
To me, what you are talking about seems less so about the nature of the bureaucracy itself, and more so just about like another point in which the government isn't as effective as it could, or as the private sector, which is an argument you can make.
It is
discussion about, but
let me finish the example, then I'll try to. So let's take housing. Housing in the UK has gotten worse and worse, and houses need to be repaired sooner than they did when compared to houses from the 1980s or the late 80s. So if a house was built in the early 2000s, things would fail within 9 to 10 years and you have to pay like several thousands of pounds to fix it. Why? We've had more regulations here, and the developers just have to meet regulations. They don't have to go above and beyond. They don't have to do extra safe. And in fact, doing extra safe, or if they do something different than the regulations, which is objectively safer, but it's not the regulations, then they'll have to go through a really painful journey with the bureaucrats to prove that it is better or safer. And the bureaucrats just know, well, this is safe according to our schematics, and we want you to do this. So it's actually easier for the developers to just meet regulations and not try any harder. It's a sort of like mind numbing thing. Like the regulations say this, shut your mind off, just do what you're told. And then in the case of where I gave the example of an extra safe car, there are companies like Mercedes and Renault which try above and beyond. We go above and beyond because that's something their customers value. And when you have like a sort of internal to the company, even a bureaucratic company, when you have internal to the company saying we want extra safety, there are production methodologies such as lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, Toyota Production System, Total Quality Management. These are all systems that take issues with safety as sort of part of like a design of the product or the overall quality of the product, and it's factored in to the overall product. So when you inject safety at the company level of that product, the company will just take it as feedback on how to make our product better. When you inject the safety at the level of the state, then it's like bureaucrats don't care how much it costs you, if it ruins your profit, if a better thing, you think a better thing would do something better, they don't care. You follow exactly what we say and shut up. And you have to meet our criterias. And that's a sort of like mind-numbing thing where you're no longer engaging with the customer, you're engaging with the bureaucrat.
Well, I would agree that that's a bad policy, right? Whenever you disincentivize the thing you actually wanted to incentivize, then that's obviously not a good policy.
Well, but here's another example of where the profit motive
you would have to substantiate why that is necessarily that's necessarily a likely outcome for a government, especially if you implement more accountability measures that allow people to democratically give feedback to the people making those laws, so that they have some pressure on them to keep those laws in line with what the people want.
Okay, hold on. First of all, you have everything you say now has no effect at all on the government. The government has no effect on the government. Your public representative has no effect on the government, in a sense. The government, as it stands now, is a large bureaucratic body. Massive. Imagine like a bureaucratic blob, 1 kilometer wide, circumference of 1 kilometer, and your tiny ants of a democratic representative tries to nip at the edges to make a change. They have the bureaucrats, the unelected bureaucrats, they're the eyes and ears of the politicians. The politician doesn't know anything until the bureaucrats feeds them information. They tell the bureaucrats what it is that they want, and the bureaucrat does the wording for what they want. And then it's like injected into this, like a series of laws are added to this large blob, and it's even more rigid to make changes. So you saying we can fix it is out of the question. I'll give you an example. Joe Biden had a problem with baby formula a year and a half ago, I think. There was a baby formula.
There was a shortage of baby formula. Right?
There was a shortage. Only one manufacturer was allowed to exist because of the FDA. Baby formulas are also part of a public welfare system for mothers who need to feed children. So it's a whole thing where you get approved. It's only you, right? And then it feeds into this whole other supply chain, which the government is already part of. And in addition, there was large tariffs on baby formula coming in from Europe and Canada. Biden could not change any of these. He literally had the easiest way was to take a military aircraft and fly baby formula. I don't remember from where. Fly baby formula in. That was the easiest route. Like he couldn't do anything on the bureaucratic side. This was like the easiest way. So, and if you think about
Well,
it, like
you wouldn't want the president to just randomly change laws like that, right? Like that's
well,
kind of the intent.
he could do like this is the thing. Like bureaucracy, in a sense, is a way of preventing totalitarian governments, isn't it? It's like you have a system of laws, then you can't have like someone with infinite power because they have to follow all these laws. Therefore,
But
there's
it's
less.
saying like it kind of becomes its own
Yeah, yeah.
entity, and yeah. I
We
mean, I
could.
could see it happening, right? Which is part of the reason for why I advocate for more decentralization and more democracy. I guess I don't really see it quite as bleak as you do, but I definitely see your point. It's certainly a part of the reason for why I want decentralization.
And to
But
some
so
and
we don't entirely disagree with that.
to some degree, let me also feed this back to our main topic of profit. The the government isn't concerned in profit, and to some degree, these regulations are they don't care about profit, and they could actually reduce your ability to make a profit because you have to meet certain regulations. Now, if in the previous example we said we want a car that has more safety because we see it as a sort of more quality to the product, a company could still make that car more affordable through automation, through productivity increases, through more innovation. Well, you could still achieve safety, but something can be done through in a cheaper way or a faster way. You get a bigger machine that produces these things faster and more, and therefore they're cheaper. But with the bureaucracy, it's intentionally designed to deprioritize profit. That's the idea. Like, and everyone would agree. Like, we want safety to go above profit.
That's literally the point, right?
Right. We
That's
want
why you
safety.
make regulations.
Exactly. We want safety above profit. But in a company setting, you could do both.
And not necessarily. Well, depends, right?
Well,
But
I suggest you look at Six Sigma. I'm pretty sure like you guys have a lot of like manufacturing stuff over there. So Six Sigma, total quality management, all these kinds of manufacturing methodologies to both increase quality and reduce waste, reduce defects, reduce issues. And there's a whole very interesting body of knowledge in this area.
well, how about we talk about a few cases where it might be justified to put regulations about profit? So let's stay with the example of car security, right?
Yeah.
So
Just before you say, no one's interested in their customers dying, right?
it depends when they die.
That's not the best way of making a profit, right? Killing your customers is not a good way of making a profit, right?
It depends entirely on the cost.
So you're saying yes?
I'm saying let's say there's a chance that after 2 years of owning the car, there's like a let's say 20% chance of your brakes not working correctly.
Okay, so let's say
If the cost for fixing that is sufficiently high, then yes, the company has an incentive to ignore that.
Okay, why would it be why would it even incentivize them to risk the life of their own customers now or in the future?
Well, because firstly, you don't know if that customer is going to return to you. Secondly, because the company has already made his purchase, so he's already given you his money and does.
Okay, so you're looking at it in a very irrational, short-term, self-destructive way for the company itself. How long does it take to build a company to get to this level? How many years? How much capital?
Well, a long time, right? But as long as people aren't able
Right.
to
Let me wait. Hold on. Let me just stay on this point, right? So, and it's important. We're thinking short term. We're thinking irrational, and we're thinking self-destructive. And I'm saying, if you think like that in general, you'll be out of business very quick. I can just make that claim. Now,
I would disagree.
Sure. Now, in addition, I would also make the claim that to get to the point where you're selling cars to customers, you have to spend millions of dollars. You have to get investment, many years to get your facilities up and running, hire the right people, pass all the checks, get to something that the market even knows you exist and people like to buy and want to buy from you. And now you have a certain reputation, right? You've worked hard to get a certain reputation. Now continue. Would you like to, from that point on, after investing all this time, money, energy, everything, would you like to sacrifice that short-term, irrational, self-destructive thing?
Yes, firstly, because it's not necessarily self-destructive. Secondly, because the cost you save by not taking these safety measures can then be reinvested and lead to more productivity. So it's not just that, like it's
So
not
you
necessarily just
realize.
short term.
So obviously you're talking bullshit. If you
Oh
harm,
no, I can
if you,
explain why.
I'll explain. If you harm your customers, and let's say a minority of people say, let's say you do injure, and I would add that if someone bought a if someone bought a product from you and it resulted in them injuring themselves, they could take you to court. That they could take you to court anyway. That's their prerogative. Now, if you have a situation where you're trying to make a reputation for yourself as a new car company after investing lots and lots of money, and then there's a rumor in the market that you are unsafe and you kill your customers, and it becomes more and more public, right? You lose your reputation, and people, they have a choice between cars. They can choose yours, they could choose 100 other places. Why would they choose yours when there's even a rumor that they could, endanger themselves or their family or whoever's driving with them? Why would they do that? So doing something as silly and self-destructive as what you're saying will destroy the company in a matter of 1 or 2 years, according to you.
Well, you're kind of presupposing the firstly that it's gonna come out that easily. When I would say it's gonna, if it's for example a safety flaw that reveals itself after like 5 years, right? It's going to take a long time, and then even once it comes out, there's easy
Okay, so
measures you can take
how
to.
would you know that it is the car's fault after 5 years?
That's the issue. That's what I'm saying. You
No,
don't in a lot
how
of
would
cases.
who would know that it is the fault of the car within 5 years? Because I'm telling you, I had a house that within 5 years I had to change, like well, 5 to 8 years, let's say, had to change like a large part of it because the developers didn't build it properly the first time. Now, how would I know that it's the developers, or it's wear and tear, or it's the way I use the house? Who would know? If it's so much in the future, how do you know?
You mean from the moment of buying or once it has
Yeah,
happened?
from the moment of buying, from the moment of building it.
For you personally, I don't think there's much you can
Any
do unless
company.
you're an expert.
How would any company know that that's what's going to happen?
You mean like how would the builder know that he didn't do a good job?
Yeah, how would the car manufacturer know they didn't do a good job? How would the builder didn't do a good job? If they followed, let's say, the regulations, if they did whatever they were told to do, and it still happened, how would they know it was them?
What if it still happened? Then you can run tests and stuff like that.
What test can you run that will happen in 8 years? You're gonna bash the car with like a hammer for 8 consecutive years, and then it blows up. You say, oh, that's what the problem was.
No, you would take out the parts that you think caused them and then put them in a condition. I guess that would increase tear and make the process a lot faster. You could also do logical extrapolations, I
Okay,
guess, and see.
if let's
That's
say
things you can do, right? None of them are
let's
certain
say
because at this point we are fortune telling, but
let basically we're blaming them for we're blaming someone for something that happened 5 to 8 years in the future, right? So if if let's say, and this does happen, a car manufacturer learns that there is a problem with the cars that they sold, and they do a recall, and they pay like local car mechanics to replace a particular part. They'll provide the part, they'll provide the payment for it, and it was only on a few, on a selected model, and then just okay, this is the easiest way to solve the problem. We'll do a recall, we'll send them the part, we'll pay someone to fix it, not the owner, and it will be fine.
well, obviously in that case the cost would be greater than, or would likely be greater than just fixing the problem in the first
Well,
place, right? But I don't think
why should they do a recall to begin with? They obviously do recalls, but why should they not do recalls? Who's forcing them to do recalls?
they would have to analyze the situation,
They
see
analyze
how
the
damaged
situation.
the image is.
They analyze the situation. They decide to do a recall. You're saying it's against their benefit to do a recall. They disagree.
I'm saying it depends on the situation in the market. If they are in a lot of trouble and like if the damage to their
Come on, man.
reputation is severe enough,
Come on.
yes.
It's not wishy-washy. It's like they obviously didn't want people to die, and they didn't want the negative repercussions from that, either from forms of being sued in court or like losing market share as a result. But either way, there's many incentive for them not to do that, purely on the market, and one of them being government, the court system.
Well, once it's found out about it, but if the damage is too indirect, or if it's too far back into the
Yeah,
if
they
it's too
couldn't.
far
They
in the
they didn't
past.
have to do a recall, but they did. They could have just claim ignorance, but maybe maybe some expert would say this, and then they'll have to pay, and then they'll have a bad reputation. And they decide just it's not worth the cost.
And sure, then it's in their benefit.
Okay, so we have already several incentives for them not to kill the customers.
Just like we have incentives for them to do so.
Sorry.
Just like we have incentives for them to do so.
No, look, I really need you to appreciate that it's silly for you to say that you as a business owner, especially one that's invested a lot of time and money in their business, not like a pop-up shop or like where you sell something that gives people stomach ache and then you run away or something to another country. I'm just saying like a regular business that invests a lot of time and money in it.
Yes.
It's silly for them to desire or even unintentionally want to kill their customers. Do you not agree?
Well, obviously, I'm not saying they literally desire to kill their
No, I mean
customers.
I'm not saying they. It's obviously well, okay. So let's take away from the table the incentive to literally kill their customers. Then let's take away.
Let's say that they have an incentive in certain cases to not implement safety precautions that could prevent their customers from being hurt.
Where is the evidence of this? If I just give you if I just gave you an example of companies doing recall, more than one, like several companies I'm aware of, do recalls. Why doesn't it point to the fact that this assumption about incentive is untrue?
No, I would argue that it just
Based on what are you
logically
arguing?
follows from.
Based,
I would say logically follows from just
but
the way the incentives that exist.
I would say that your logic is flawed then, because if your logic applied to reality, it obviously is the case that it's not correct.
Okay, so let's put up all the incentives we have here, right? On the one hand, there's the cost you need for actually fixing the issue, right?
Yep.
On the other hand, you have the cost to your reputation that's gonna result in revenue losses. You have the customers that might potentially if your customers die, obviously they can't repay, they can't go back to you and purchase something. So obviously that's also revenue cost. So you have, I would say you have those, and then you also have the cost if you want to fix your reputation.
Let me give you the actual incentives. The reputation, the cost to your reputation is the possible shutting down of your company. It could be a very severe cost to your reputation, and in addition to that, people have other options. So if you're the only one, maybe, but if like there's 100 other car companies, and like it's just easier to buy it from someone else, then it's a severe cost. It's a severe risk. Sorry. And in addition, even though people die, they can't return to you, but their families can take you to court, or the government itself can take you to court, and you'll have to pay a severe amount of money. Could be more, and if you multiply it by the number of people, could be more than doing a recall. And obviously, losing a lot of market share and the threat of being taken to court is enough to do a recall.
Okay, let me ask you like this: why are there companies who are taken to court?
The customers, variety of reasons, like really variety of reasons.
But if you are saying that the threat of being taken to court is so great that you wouldn't risk that, and yet it still happens all the time.
If it's a nuisance claim, right? Then sure, you have lawyers for that. You'll try to be as fair as you can. There are nuisance claims. But if you like outright hurt people, even unintentionally, that's not a good look. That's not something you want to do. And I don't think the people in the company are interested in doing that either. I don't think there'll be a situation where, if I kill adults and children, I can make more money. That sounds good. Maybe I should. Like, no one's thinking that.
People are thinking, there's a 0.5% chance that this might lead to stillbirths in women. Do I risk that chance?
Okay, look. Then if in the case of medicine, right? There are risks,
and
right?
It's just medicine, right?
All you
can, just like food in general.
All you can, in the case of medicine, there are risks. All you can do is inform the customer. There are always risks to medicine, right? All you can do is inform the person who's buying, inform their doctor as well, and let them make the decision. There was a drug that libertarians and people who like government argue a lot about, which the company itself will. But let's say it was a pain medication against arthritis, but it also increased the chance of getting a heart attack. Now, obviously, heart attacks are not good, but some people say like they couldn't continue living their life without this pain medication. Like the pain was so immense, like life was not worth living. So you need to kind of let them and their doctors decide what to do. If like they don't have a high chance of heart disease and it increases that, then maybe they can just take it. If they do have heart disease, maybe they can counteract it with a different pill. If it's just, look, there's no point, it's too risky, you will have a heart attack because your heart is already in a bad situation, then there's nothing they can do. But you need to let them decide the risk.
My argument there would be that this more or less works in medicine because it's a highly regulated field and companies are legally required to be transparent about this stuff. Though even
why would you not want to be transparent though? Why would you not want to be transparent?
Why? Well, because the more your customers are aware of the potential flaws with your product, the less they're going to buy it.
Your product solves a particular problem that they have. They're interested in the solution to their physical ailment. Now, there are always side effects to these medicine, and your prerogative is to give them give them as much opportunity to understand what those may be and study what those may be before it happens, so that they're fully knowledgeable as to what happened. Now, if you don't do that, then you just risk you risk your brand name, and you risk being taken to court. Like you didn't say that I would get this thing, or maybe you could say like, it was a 0.00, we didn't know, something like that. But like but even in this kind of scenario, everyone's trying to fix the health problem. No one's trying to, you don't release a product that doesn't fix the health problem well.
How do you definitively prove that, like, for example,
nothing can be definitively? You're going to have to ask me a different question because I can't definitively prove anything.
Yeah, sorry, sorry, badly framed. How do you, I guess, sufficiently prove that a substance that, I guess, a food manufacturer puts into his food to make it taste a bit better has a, I guess, 20% chance to increase the likelihood of having cancer in 50 years? How do you make that?
Okay, hold on. 50 years is an insane time period. Anything can happen. No one can know that. That's like a
right. And companies have an incentive to not even
you
say.
You can't.
Might be like, oh, I have no idea what this is gonna do, but I'm gonna put it in my food anyways because.
You can't ask that question. 50 years is a very, very long period of time to even deduce that it originated from this flavoring. You can't. If you say like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, then I'd or 8 years, I'd look into that. But 50 years, anything can happen in 50 years. Like
well, sure. We could say 8 years, right? The point remains the same. I mean, like, you can't just take the company to court. You would have to wait for someone to actually run a study on that, and then maybe come to results. And then the company would also run counter studies on that and find
let's look at this. Let's look at a few ways, right? So basically, what you and I are discussing right now, if we take a look at a bit of an overview, is that we're saying that self-interest and the profit motive are bad. They have negative side effects, and those negative side effects can hurt other people. That's why we need the government to step in. That's what the discussion here is really about. So the profit motive, it's good.
That we need to do away with capitalism altogether, right?
Right. Okay, but the argument, the conversation we are right now is we're finding holes in the concept of self-interest and in the concept of the profit motive, because we're saying sometimes the profit motive can lead to negative things, and in this particular concept we're saying, how do you know that the profit motive of a particular product, flavoring for a particular food product, would not lead to cancer in 8 years' time? That's a very tall ask. Now, if it were so. Sorry, before I continue. So again, we're going over saying the self-interest is bad, profit motive is bad. Now, if you're saying that the profit motive is bad, then, we lose basically a lot of the benefits that we've gained from the profit motive. And if you're saying people can't be trusted, then obviously we need the government to make sure that we can trust people or put a framework that we can trust people. And then we get the regulation, the bureaucracy, the taxes, and we get to where we are right now. But if we did trust people that they're not interested in killing their customers, and if they did hear that a particular substance can lead to negative health effects in the future, and therefore they'll just take it out. There's like a penny per item of food. Like they'll just replace it with something else that even costs 2 pennies. Wow, a different food coloring costs 2 whole pennies instead of 1. Like they do that already with allergies, and like, oh, you take away milk, you put soy milk in like a cookie or something. Most people don't care. They don't even notice that you made that change, and it just, you have less allergic reactions. You can sell to more people, except like the diehard people say, no, I actually do want milk, I don't want soya. But most people don't care, and they'll just make that change because it's easier to not piss off people or not harm them. They do that all the time. So we need to get to a situation where we acknowledge that the profit motive and self-interest is not interested in hurting other people. They have no benefit at all from doing so.
Oh, I never said they have no benefit from doing so, right? I'm saying they are incentivized to do it.
I'm saying. You're saying that they do have a profit motive to hurt others that can result in other people being hurt.
Oh, hurt others.
Therefore, we can't trust it. We can't trust people to interact with one another, and we can't trust their, self-interest, therefore, and profit. So we have to intervene. And if we can't trust it, then, what's the point of this market thing? If we need heavy government regulation to get to a point where we can trust it.
Well, see, that's where the libertarian socialism comes in, right? I neither trust the private corporations nor the government. Okay. Basically, it all comes back to what we said at the start, right? I'm a psychological egoist. I believe all of us are fundamentally self-interested. And to me, given that I have utilitarian preferences, to me what follows from that is that we have to make sure that people don't assert their own self-interest over that of others. And that, for example, so to bring it back to the profit motive.
Wait, hold on, wait. What do you mean? What do you mean? If everyone is self-interested,
yes,
we agree on that. What does that mean? Assert their self-interest over that of others.
That basically means, let's say me and 3 other people are in a room. I have a gun, none of them do. So I use the power that gun gives me to assert my self-interest over theirs. Basically, so like my self-interest has the most weight in that room because I use power to assert it over theirs.
Okay, can you give me any other example than that? That doesn't seem like can apply to anything, any thought process with regards to free markets.
What do you mean it doesn't apply to any
you said I have a gun and I tell people I don't know how that can be applied in a market setting or profit motive setting.
Let's take a company town, for example, right? Because it's an easy example. Basically, you have
hold on, pause. I don't want to take company towns as an example. They're very, very rare. And as far as I know from the digging that I've done, the people who make them do it for altruistic / religious reasons. Like some person made a company town around sewing machines for women, and they're like, no, you have to dress like this, you have to go to church on this time, and you can't work between this and this. It was like for altruistic reasons. That's not like, I mean, it happened, and it also happened on so few occasions. I don't even know what's the point of mentioning it.
All right, then I wanted to mention it because it's an easy example, but also we can basically go to any market. Okay. Where there's a surplus of suppliers or basically where there's either a surplus of suppliers or people who demand, right?
Okay.
Once there's a surplus of either, then the person who's like basically has the most leverage has more power to set the conditions. So for example, like in the low income labor market, right? There's a lot of people who need those jobs to survive.
Okay.
And so the employers can get away with a lot of shit that they wouldn't otherwise get away with.
Okay, so for example, I don't agree. So, and you're comparing that. It seems to me like you're comparing that example with you having a gun in a room with 3 other people. Because to me, I don't see like force being applied here. You could say like that someone has.
For example, the comparison I'm making is about.
You're saying power. You're saying So.
Yes, and obviously me literally having a gun and is obviously a far greater power than me being in an advantageous economic position, right?
Yeah,
But
so
the
I
fundamental from there is the same. I hold power over you. Or I have more power than you do, so I can make. So when we come together to make a deal, I have more leverage to make sure that that deal has more favorable outcomes to me than it does to you.
Okay, so I understand your point. So you're saying, look, there's a market of suppliers and a market of, let's say, there's a market of employers and a market of potential employees, and some potential employees out of that market, or a minority of potential employees in reality, don't have too many options, and they have to rely on jobs which aren't that great, and their employer has more, in quotation, leverage than they do. But to them, it's still a good opportunity to take, right?
Or we could also like to make it less stereotypically socialist. We could also like take the example of a small business owner, right? His business is barely keeping up, and he has to hire new workers to get to like improve his business.
Mm-hmm.
So he like cuts back on his own income to pay his workers because he wants his business to grow his business.
Okay.
In that case, he has less leverage than his workers because the workers can just go to anyone else, and he just has this one business that he wants to keep growing.
Okay, but that doesn't seem like force. It just seems like that's the situation.
Oh yeah, it's not
And
force. What I'm talking about is power.
it's not
Power isn't
power.
necessarily force.
It's not
It is
power.
power.
I don't
It's
think
economic.
economic power is when I can buy stuff.
No, okay, so let's get really down to the definitions. To me, power is essentially the ability to assert your self-interest around your environment, right? Like if you have power over something, that means you can make it do what you want to do, want to have it done.
Right,
Right?
but I can't. It's not like I become, if I have more money, I become a king over other people. It's like if I have more money, I can buy a nicer car and people will send me the nicer car. Or I can buy two cars.
If you have more money, that means you have more economic leverage to make people do what you want them to do.
If
That doesn't mean you have literally
I can't, okay, look, I can't make them do anything they outright do not want to do. But if they want to sell cars and I want that car, then I can engage in a trade which will make them give me that car because we're both self-interested in doing that. The self-interest is still on both sides, and we're both interested in getting the best outcome for ourselves given the conditions and opportunities that we have available. And those conditions and opportunities are just what we're born with from nature, what how we start off from nature. Those are nothing to do with other people. I mean, how if you take that away, even if you take that opportunity away from people, how would they rise up if they don't have that really bad, job, entry level job? If you take that away from them, how will they go up the career ladder?
Well, they can still have the job, right? It would just be nice.
No, but if you take the job away, or you make it too expensive for that if you, let's say, you put a minimum wage, and that person, now look, if I have a minimum, if I have to pay, I don't know, some amount of money, then I'll take the best person for that job and not the person I would have taken before, who I would have paid less, but they would have gotten, a foot in the door in their career.
I think that depends a lot on whether the minimum wage cuts into the profit margins of the corporations. If the corporations have to pay more for their workers,
It,
but
it has nothing to do. Look, it has nothing to do. I didn't even say profit margin, because if it outright cuts in the profit margins, then the person will either reduce staff or shut down the business, and that has been done. Now, I'm just saying, without considering the profit margins, I'm just saying, if the minimum wage is X, I'll take the best person I can get for that job, and I won't take the person who would have charged X minus $2 because I can't. It's illegal, and I would have taken that person because they only charge X minus $2, and I would have let them come in, and I would have given them like an entry door into their career. So basically, you could say you're gentrifying entry level jobs by putting a minimum wage.
Mm, I don't know. I would argue there that there's generally enough positions that we want to have filled for people to. I do see your point, though. Yeah.
Okay, let's
I
take
would argue that there's enough positions so that like the gentrification or whatever you want to call it there doesn't have, obviously that's a metaphor, right? But that it doesn't have like as big of an effect, right? But
so let's take let's take
Also, I would
let's
argue
take
that like
let
in
me let me
recent
give you the
50s,
let me give you the data that I know. So let's take black teens in America. So they come from, impoverished backgrounds. Their parents maybe single parent, female led single parent family. The school system was terrible, public school system. Now they're in a position where they need to start their career somewhere, and they, an employer has like an option of 10 people, and he has to, I don't know, $15 or $10. I don't know what the thing is. Let's say 15 in some. So he'll take the best person he can for that amount of money, and a person who didn't have a good school education. Sorry, and the person he took had a good school education, potentially even university education. Because what happens is people come from university that they're underemployed sometimes, and they'll just kick out the people who don't have a university or high school education. So even if you didn't finish high school, you're shit out of luck, really.
hmm.
And they'll just push the people. They'll just put pressure down on the type of people that can get these entry level jobs, including black teens who now have like, I don't know, 40% unemployment. I don't even know what the no. I think I did this like 2 years ago, and I'm getting numbers from research I did back then. But it is not low that black teens are not able to get their foot in the door. Like the door, the steps towards the door are now much higher for them to climb it and then start their career. Some, I mean, and even if they get like a job, even if they don't earn anything or they earn under the table or something, they're earning, they're gaining experience at work. They can, get a good recommendation. They can go work somewhere else. They can improve their skills. They need to start somewhere, especially teenagers. And if that's taken away, it has an extremely negative effect on their long-term life.
Yeah, there's 3 points that I would be making. Firstly, I would say that low income jobs like that, negotiation is far less common there to begin with.
Oh yeah.
So generally, you
Oh,
don't
can
even
I
see
can I actually
like the kind of scenario you describe, where like
can I just add something
and
really quick? It's really funny. I've only discovered this recently. So you remember when I said about the houses? When I said if there's a regulation to build a roof in a particular way, then people just stick to the regulation.
yes,
This also somehow, I didn't know this till recently. This somehow also applies to entry level jobs. So the entry level jobs or minimum wage jobs, when you classify something as minimum wage jobs, you kind of anchor the price to that. So like everyone knows that it's a minimum wage job, so no one tries to bargain more than that because that's just the name of the job. Everyone's just following the regulation of the government to set the price for that. So if it's below or above, it's stuck there. The only way to go like above it is like either not call it a minimum wage jobs like they do in that White Castle thingy, which I help pay more, or they say you're a manager, you're no longer a minimum wage job, or you're like a shift manager or shift whatever, I don't know, and you're no longer a minimum wage job because otherwise people are just glued to that figure. Anyway, go on, continue.
well, I would say that I've looked at a few low income jobs, right? And I would say that usually, at least
In
in Germany,
Germany? Where in
they tend,
Germany? Where in Germany
huh?
have you looked for low wage jobs? Eh? Where?
Berlin,
Sorry?
Berlin,
Berlin. Which side? East or
yes,
west?
east.
East
Well,
Berlin?
I guess
Ah,
technically.
yeah. Oh no. Go on.
But yeah, so usually they do tend to be a bit higher than minimum wage, right? But either way, on that point, I'm sure you've read that in a study somewhere, right?
What? That East Berlin? Something?
No, not East Berlin. Just like that, that there's the stickiness to the minimum wage.
Yeah. People just you even call it a minimum wage job. There's no arguments. That's it. That's the even
No,
people just anchor to the price.
oh yeah, I'm just saying. Could you send me that study after the debate? I would love to look over that.
Yeah, I have to look at that. But it was just so funny. Like, oh, it makes sense now. Like, oh, okay.
Then what was the second point I was gonna make? Kind of got went on a tangent there. I
You
guess
said
I
you
will
had
just
three. You said you had 3 points on minimum wage.
yes, and I'm thinking what the second point was. Well, let me just make the third point and hope I'm gonna come up with the second again.
Sure.
So my third point would be: isn't it bad that like people have to be satisfied with wages that might not even support their bare minimum necessities?
Well, I mean, look, that's not necessarily the fault of the business owner. Like, look, the business owner has a job. It doesn't. it's not you personally. He needs someone for that job, right?
Mm.
There's like it doesn't. It's not personally to you. It doesn't have to be like a mother with 4 kids. It doesn't have to be a teenager. You just need someone for that role, and that's I don't know if it's a minimum wage role, if it's a low skilled role. That's just the opportunity for that particular job. Doesn't mean you have to accept that one, but if it is good for you, then you should accept it. If I know in Germany wages are a little bit higher, um, prices are a little bit higher, prices of goods are a little bit higher as well.
Well, it
The
depends on compared to who, right? They are vastly lower than in the US. I was actually shocked.
I think Berlin itself is like quite expensive to rent as well.
Also rent, absolutely, yeah.
And well, it's a city, but what can you do? But I think I think I think Germany is one of those examples. There's heavy government intervention. Like there's also like when you're in school, you'll either go to like an internship from school, or you'll go to
There's basically
university.
there's basically mandatory internships in 8th grade.
Yeah, but the government chooses if you go to university or go to internship, right?
Oh no, no. Basically, the way it works is it depends on your degree. Basically, there's like in Britain you have A levels, right? After like your basic high school
Yeah.
diploma. Yeah, it's the same in Germany. Basically, you either just finish after high school and then you
Oh, I
can't get
see.
to university, or you do your A levels.
But who chooses to go to university? Is it the people? Is it the choice of the people, or does the government decide? Like in
Oh no,
Singapore, who goes where?
no, it's 100% the choice of the people. Like I could
Okay,
go to any university now, say, hey, I have my A levels. Then they would look at my grades and decide whether I can compete with the other students or not.
I see. Okay, so in places like Singapore, they decide if you're going on an internship or to university, like based on your results, and then if you don't like that, you have to pay for private university or something. But otherwise, it's the government just dictates for
Yeah,
you
I'm probably
to
not
some
the
degree.
biggest fan of that. I feel like that decision should be up to the individual because they are more likely to know where their affinities are.
Sorry, back to the point. The government has like this good relationship with industry, and they set up these internships, and everyone kind of has one. We don't have it. It's not that popular in the UK, for example, but I know it is popular in Germany. And also, I think in the third year of a university, you also work somewhere. But
It
that's
depends on the major.
yeah. So there's like you're basically like prepared to go into the workforce very very early on, and yeah, like you kind of are supposed to get a job, a well-paying job, a job of someone who has some years experience as an apprenticeship at the very minimum. Um, that's my understanding anyway.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely a lot of programs that make it, I guess, easier for people to get into the workforce.
Okay, and you like this German method, or you prefer the free markets?
I would say it seems reasonable, but the point I was gonna make is basically that like we need all those low income jobs, right? And yet pay a lot of the people who have them not enough to even like properly survive.
I think
And I
I
feel like
think I think the low income jobs are a minority, and they are personally. I think they're either entry level jobs for a reason, like you're supposed to move away from them at some point, and they just have a high churn, or like if you increase the sorry 1 second. If you increase the wages too much, then people will just have it automated like they do in McDonald's, for example. But as it stands, like it's easier to just hire someone for cheap. Hmm.
but that's what I'm saying, right? I'm saying that even if there's benefits to hiring someone for cheap, that person still needs to live. So what do we do about that? Do we just like accept that they're not going to be properly supplied with nutrients and stuff for a lot of their early life, which is going to lead to them not developing as much as a person?
Well, I think you're catastrophizing slightly. If it's a teenager, then they'll still live,
I mean, sure,
right?
if they are still living with their parents, right, then sure, make them work a second job, a second job, but like the wage isn't as high. Like the problem isn't really there then, right? But
Well, a
there's
lot, a lot of the entry level jobs are between the age of 16 and 24.
So then in that case, I don't really have that much of an issue with it.
And just look at the numbers. And even
No,
like minimum wage, I think it's like I think it's
also,
like
just
only
to be clear,
1% or 2% of the overall population. Thank you, honey.
also just to be clear, as far as I know, there's a limit when the minimum wage applies in Germany. So, for example, there's something that's called I think it's student jobs, basically, where
Okay.
like it's a very small job that you work as a student, where like the minimum wage doesn't apply because you're expected to do it on the side while you're still living with your parents and stuff.
Okay. I mean, look, I would say in general, I would say that if you have like a free market and there are very few barriers to entries for entrepreneurs to come in my humble opinion, I would say that you would have more employers, more companies to compete over jobs, even these entry level jobs, and therefore cause a situation where there's higher demand for those jobs and increase wages or conditions or the likelihood of improving your career. So in general, just as a supply and demand kind of like theme, I would say that you'd have more of that in a free market.
Do you have evidence to suggest that like the main reason there's not as much entrepreneurship as there could be is regulations and government involvement?
So, I mean, to some degree, does it affect entrepreneurship? Does it affect the creation of new companies?
Does it
So
affect it strongly enough for it to have like this big impact on the quality of labor you can get?
so it's a difficult ask. I can talk in generalities. I could say that if you have regulations that eat into the profit margins or make it difficult to hire someone because there are a lot of considerations and administrative burdens or costs, that would mean you hire fewer people. If you don't have a good chance of earning money earning money in relation to what you invest, you wouldn't start the company to begin with. You may even close down if you did. So the profit has to be over a certain amount for people to get interested in the position in the company. Sorry, and both taxes and regulations eat into that. Now, regulations, in addition, can be barriers to entry just to start the company, get into the industry. Like you have to have X, Y, and Z, and that's how free marketers will say this is how you form monopolies because you have a high barrier to entry, so fewer people can enter the industry, and therefore the larger players can be more aggressive towards the minority of players because the government just cut off new entrants from coming in, and and
Personally,
e-
I would.
and, and even they may encourage regulations that would result in cutting off new entrants.
Okay, so for starters, what do you think about regulations and especially like tax structures where like they benefit small businesses? So that basically you go like, okay, depending on how long the business has existed and how large it is, we are gonna like not be as strict with our regulations and gonna give them some tax benefits.
You can so this is subsidies. You can do subsidies in terms of taxes, but I don't see how you can not do it in terms of regulations. Ultimately, the regulations are there for protecting the consumers. So I don't see how the size of a business will affect that.
Well, if you're arguing that like regulations are this great hindrance to entrepreneurship and we want entrepreneurship, then you could make a case for
Not at the
being a bit less.
but it would defeat the purpose of those regulations in this instance. If you're protecting the consumers, then it doesn't matter like the state of it. Like if an entrepreneur comes in and you say, okay, just for you, you have no regulations, then they somehow cause
Not no
issues.
regulations, just less regulations, right? You take regulations that are
I
like
don't see
not as important, but
I don't see how you
definitely
can do
probably.
that. Regulations are so like bureaucracy and regulations are so massive. I don't even see how you can entertain that idea. It's just such a headache
Well, for example, just by
reading them.
making a streamlined version of it, right? For like where you focus really on the most important.
There is no such thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why not make
There is
such a
no
thing?
such thing. There's no stream. Look, I can show you. I only have like from America, but I can show you like how regulations become larger and larger over time. In 2020, there were 4.7 million restrictions, uh, like just federally, not even like state or like if you have like insure like
Oh, no, I trust you on that. I do work with government papers here and there.
sure. So it's just me like paying my taxes is such a vague and ambiguous thing. Like I don't see how you can streamline anything unless you do something like, look, all taxes are just one number. You can pay it in 5 minutes. We don't like. There's no deductions, no nothing. It's just a low number. Leave us alone and just pay it. Okay. If you do something like that, like this is tax simplifications. If you do something like that and you kind of like make it redundant to those, this is a bit of a side point, make it redundant for companies to play with the rules so they can be more tax efficient. Just say, well, taxes are low, no deductions, no playing around, equal to everyone, big or small. Then you could in theory incentivize entrepreneurs that way, absolutely. Because if a large company comes in, let's say Amazon comes into a town on a state level or on a country level or city level, and states and cities and countries compete for companies because it's jobs and their citizens
Yeah, of
want
course.
jobs. And they say, you have a subsidy, you don't have to pay tax above this number, and just employ 10,000, 50,000 people in our state. Well, that's what we want. So those people will have more of a preference. And there are industrial policies just for these kind of large players coming into your state or city. But if you say we don't have any of that, we just have a flat low tax for everyone, large and small, no loopholes, no nothing, just pay it. It's too small to even bother with playing with it. Just pay it. People will do that, and that will incentivize entrepreneurs.
Well, then we also have the issues that Amazon won't move in the small town, right?
Maybe if it's worthwhile for them, like if it's low enough,
If,
if it's low
if,
enough,
if,
they will move.
if it was already worthwhile for them, then they wouldn't need the additional incentive, right?
If you have, let's say, if you have an economic zone with a low tax rate, yeah,
Mm.
people start moving to that economic zone. They start building something. At some point, it does incentivize large companies because there's a lot of activity there as well. It does incentivize large company to put an office, put a factory in. Yeah, it just happens on its own.
Sure, but if it was that easy, they wouldn't have to incentivize Amazon, right? There's like, it does happen eventually, or it might also not happen because there's the whole problem of brain drain going on, right?
No,
Where
that,
people who are born in that town and become proficient at causing, at like creating economic activity, move into the city to do it there.
the
So
idea is
it's
the,
not that easy, right?
the idea is basically this, right? The politicians and all the bureaucrats put a high tax number or high burden on everyone, and then they leave room for themselves to give it to friends and family, or friends of family. Yeah, they can come in, they can put into the town because they have that buffer. People in the industry are incentivized to approach the politicians, and now the politicians are starting to sell something to people. They have some sort of leverage now because they've raised it to like 39% corporation. I don't know what it is in America. 39% corporation tax, 21% something in addition to that. All sorts of rules that you have to play. If you have employees, you have to make sure even if they're male, that they have to pay for pregnancy leave or something like that. I don't know, a variety of different things. And then they say, well, for you, because we want you in our town, we'll not enforce these things for the first 2 to 5 years or something like that. And then they invite people in. But if they didn't have the stick, they wouldn't have the carrot.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm saying. If you don't have the carrot, then how do you get the big companies moving in? What I'm kind of pointing out is that I guess this is one of the issues I tend to have with the free market. That like there's so many situations in which there's always this, you gain some, you lose some, right? There's always this big cost to making this decision. I feel like a lot of them just aren't necessary.
Okay, but just to understand, if you have a situation where the government is small, taxes are low, regulations are, let's say, lowish, and then they say, look, Amazon, if you want to come here, fine. If you don't. Someone will come here and we'll hands off. Like we're only here if murder, invasion, gang violence. That's what we're here for. Anything else, like we're not involved. Why would large companies not come there just because taxes are low, regulations are low. They can set up relatively easily. I mean, yes, they don't get any special treatment from a high tax, like a high tax city that gives them special treatment, but they also don't have to negotiate anything. It's still low taxes relatively, and it's low regulations.
So what they're talking about is basically just like the town universally lowering taxes or something like that.
Let's say it's an economic zone with low taxes. Why would they not set up shop there? Or why would they prefer like a town where they have like a crooked bureaucrat or politician that gives them favorable treatment over an economic zone?
Oh, well, why they would set up in that town, like in the corrupt town, is kind of obvious, right? Because there they have less competition to worry about. But no, if it's just about like turning low-income areas into making them more profitable by I guess like cutting taxes and that sort of stuff, I could see an argument. I'm not entirely opposed to it, depending on the circumstance. Like obviously, you could also run into issues where like all these companies are setting up shop there, and then you just don't have the revenue to fund any public services. But I mean that could still be funded by
you wouldn't have public services. The public services will be provided by the market, basically. Like the public services that you have will be police, army, court, prison.
And I mean, you could also argue that like if no company is gonna set up there, then you're not gonna have high tax. Then you're not gonna have tax income anyways, right? So yeah, I guess all in all, I'm not opposed to the idea of like.
Great. Can I mark you down as a free marketeer? Can I write you down next to your name? Dash likes free market, heart capitalism.
No, what I would say is that like in cases like these, we can use the free market to our advantage, right? I've never, just to be clear, I've never argued that like the free market has no benefits whatsoever, right? Like we started off this conversation agreeing that the free market is vastly superior to anything that's come before it, right? So I'm not arguing there's no benefits.
Okay, cool. Okay, look, we're at 2.5 hours now, or 2 and 15. What would you say? Like, have I persuaded you on some things? Have you persuaded me on some things? How do you think it went so far?
Let me think. I guess I feel like we have been a bit all over the place, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think we have touched on many topics, and
I would say you're right, but I think we did loyally stick to profit and self-interest quite well throughout the.
Yeah, I guess the issue is more so just how broad of a topic it is. One really interesting thing that I haven't thought about before that is absolutely correct is the whole thing. What you pointed out with the housing regulations, right? How
oh god, it's so frustrating.
How there's an incentive there to just stick to the regulations because the more stuff you add on top, the harder it's gonna be for the bureaucrats to, or at least with the current policies to quantify that somehow. And then so to me that's like that's definitely a point where like we need better policies there. I wouldn't say that's an argument for no regulations, but it's definitely an issue that you've brought to my attention that I've not even thought about before.
The thing is that, and I have this sort of argument with a lot of people, even more like centrist leaning than you, or like you say, look, I believe that the self-interest and profit motive won't harm people, and in addition, the government is failing at what it does. It's not good. So when people like yourself and even more centrist leaning people hear the government isn't doing a good job, to them, it just means, well, the government should do a better job. We should hire better politicians. We should hire better bureaucrats. Like it never occurs to them that this is the wrong direction and that profit and self-interest is the right direction because it can handle itself. And we haven't even talked about the vast self-regulations you can have within the market, or like different companies that are responsible for quality assurance or business insurance that, in case you're taken to court, the business insurance would say, well, we don't want you to get taken to court, therefore you have to change this in your product and stuff like that. But the thing is, like the assumption that self-interest and profit are bad is why you have all the systems, the mixed economy that we have today. And I would say that the root of that is from religion, because we're not trusting that self-interest is good for the collective. And even like in religion, like it's not black and white. Like there's a mix. Like there's a balance to it, which is why we have a mixed economy. So I think people should really have a better understanding of how market functions, and from a free market perspective, and then we may hopefully in the future have a situation where we don't have to pay exorbitant amounts of money for public health care. Our economy may grow, our quality of life may grow, and I really do think it has to go back to the Enlightenment. We need like an Enlightenment 2.0.
Well, that's kind of assuming, though, the opposition doesn't really have arguments, right?
I'm not following.
Like when you are saying that these things are inspired by religion and stuff, you're kind of presupposing that there's no sufficient reasoning behind it.
I'm presupposing that people just think, just deep down have an intuition that self-interest and profit motive is good in some cases, in some or most cases, but in some cases the government has to come in and regulate, because they'll have a motive to harm other people. I think deep down people have an intuition, with an unreflected intuition, that is the case, and that is why they want the government to step in, and bureaucrats are then in a position to keep adding more and more safety measures, more and more regulations, and it doesn't matter how much it costs, how much it increases prices for consumers, or increase the cost of living, because that's not their focus. Their focus isn't on the profit motive or cost. Their focus is on safety.
Yeah, well, the focus to me is just, as you kind of, I guess, alluded to, the focus on me is that, like, yeah, I would say the profit motive doesn't always align with the well-being of the people.
Okay, would you at least agree that the downstream, the long term, 100 years later downstream effect of this is we have high cost of medicine, high cost of university education, at least in the UK. I think yours is free, but at least in the UK, high cost of housing, high cost of childcare, and just these are the things that increased our cost of living, and make people's life, people, poor. Even if you're concerned people on the poor end, that would hurt them the most.
I mean, I could just as easily argue that those are caused by the free market, right?
How would you say that though? How could you even make that claim?
Well, by arguing essentially from the ways in which again, like that's I guess one thing that I would take away from this debate is that, like, I have to work more on my debate skills, because you still seem to be, like, under the impression that there's no arguments for, or like no even remotely reasonable arguments for the profit motive potentially being harmful, right?
I think it depends how you define it. I think if you look at the profit motive, if you look at, again, I have to switch to self-interest. If you look at self-interest as short-term, irrational, emotive, and self-destructive, and I'm defining it intentionally in this way, then that could lead to issues. And if people see self-interest with the way I've just described these words, then they would see profit motive as, in some cases, it would be an issue. Therefore, we need the government to step in. But if you see self-interest as long-term rational self-interest, then I do not think that people would see it that way. I think right now I can give you an example. If there was a company, if there was a for-profit company and a non-profit company that sold people exactly the same thing, right? People would trust the non-profit company more.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, that's kind of like the problem. It's just an intuition. People just have a strong intuition that they don't trust it. I mean,
to me, it would be less of an intuition. It would be more of a probabilistic thing. That, like, I would argue, to me, my internal reasoning would be that the non-profit argument company has less of a reason to hide negative factors that the product might have from me. Basically, to me, I would assume that the non-profit product is going to be more likely to actually be what I'm going to get.
You're kind of confirming what I'm saying. I just gave you like a questionnaire example, like would you trust it's a fake, it's not a real situation.
I know. We are assuming that both products are identical, right?
Yeah, the companies don't actually exist. Like, it's just I'm just giving you a hypothetical.
What I'm saying is, like, if I made that purchase, I wouldn't know they are literally identical, right? I would look at all the factors and then I would ask myself, is this really all there is to it? And I would have an answer to that, and I would wonder, which company has more of an incentive to hide negative factors from me?
This is exactly the point. You have sort of like a negative vision, and you think bad thoughts about this company. It's not like this is objectively the case. You just think that it's bad. You have a feeling that it is bad because it's for profit. Whereas another one is non-profit, so it must definitely not be hiding anything from you.
No, it must not necessarily be hiding anything from me. I would say it has less of an incentive to hide something from me.
Why? Why would it have less of an incentive? It's like, if you're saying one is bad, why isn't the other? Just because it's non-profit? What's the difference?
Yes, because the profit-oriented company actually like has a profit incentive to make me buy the product. While the
right, but the non-profit one,
because it's non-profit.
Okay.
But I guess the stakeholder.
I think you should re-listen to this conversation later, this part of the conversation, and tell me if you see like something wrong with how you looked at it. But okay. Anyway, yeah, it was nice chatting with you. Let's do it again. Come up with another topic. We can do it again. And yeah, have a nice day.
You too.
Bye.
Goodbye.